when I was translating the introduction to Uncle Tom's Cabin that was written in Yiddish, and I was translating it into English, Ayzik Meyer Dik often will address women specifically in his work. So he'll refer, to the Leserin, the female reader, and he does this consistently and specifically throughout his whole work. However, most scholars who study Ayzik Meyer Dik, and in particular Iris Parouche, who wrote an incredible book about women readers in the Yiddish Haskalah, she proves pretty decisively that although Ayzik Meyer Dik addressed female readers, addressed women readers, his readership was by no means dominated by women readers, and that Ayzik Meyer Dik invented this readership in a way as a way of making his work more culturally acceptable. Because in his world, Yiddish literature, especially Yiddish literature that was not directly engaged with questions of religious observance, was seen for mostly female readership. And this ascribed to the female readers a penchant for fluff and for lack of intellectual seriousness and what have you from the misogyny of that time. And so the question was, when I was translating all of these gestures that he was making to female readers, do I translate it into English as "my dear female reader"? Or do I translate it as "dear reader" and make it a more neutral term? And I came up with the fact that I would keep it to specifically just reader and make a footnote, because I think that it's important not to completely accept the kinds of biases that he had as a Maskilic writer towards Yiddish as a quote-unquote feminine language or feminized language. That said, I struggle in my own scholarship to include women's voices because they're harder to obtain in the specific worlds in which I'm inhabiting. So for example, American studies in the Yiddish language as it existed from the 19th century to the 20th century was mostly male intellectuals, except for the fact that the first American novel translated into Yiddish was written by a woman, Harriet Beecher Stowe. He erases her name. I think that in my own scholarship and in my own work, I try to point to these things to make people aware. The question of analyzing a work along the categories of race, class, and gender is something that I think is more complicated for me, because those categories are used less rigorously today as they were, say, 20 years ago in Jewish studies. And people are trying to look at, I think, sort of different analytical categories than those. However, my intellectual heritage and my graduate study at Berkeley was with some of the greatest feminist scholars in Jewish studies, and I think that even my engagement with the Yiddish literature of the Haskalah is through Naomi Seidman, specifically her interest in how women experienced the Jewish Enlightenment, because through Yiddish is really the way that we can talk about the ethos of the Jewish Enlightenment being communicated to both men and women, but specifically women who were excluded from traditional Jewish study for the most part. But yeah.